There's a compound in South Dakota that doesn't appear on any map. No roads lead to it. No satellites can photograph what's inside. But if you ask the right people, the ones who move billions across borders with a single phone call, they'll tell you it exists, and they'll tell you something else. They'll tell you they have a key. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a survival strategy, and it's being funded by people who know something you don't. While you were scrolling through your phone this morning, wondering if you should buy that extra bag of rice, ... Families with last names you recognize were finalizing blueprints for underground cities, not bunkers. Cities with hydroponics farms, with medical wings, with armories that could equip a small nation. And here's the part that should terrify you. They're not preparing for a nuclear war. They're preparing for something they believe is inevitable, something they think you won't survive. The question isn't whether the collapse is coming. The question is, why do they think they'll be the only ones left standing? Let's go back, not to 2008, not to the Great Depression. Further, because the wealthy have always known one fundamental truth that the rest of us refuse to accept. Power is temporary. Civilizations crumble. And when the music stops, there are never enough chairs. In ancient Rome, the patrician class didn't trust the empire. They trusted their villas in the countryside. Hidden estates with walls thick enough to withstand sieges, with grain storage that could last decades, with private armies loyal only to coin. When Rome burned, when the Visigoths tore through the gates, when the aqueducts ran dry and plague consumed the streets, those families didn't perish with the mass. They watched from a distance, and when the smoke cleared, they rebuilt. Under new names, with new titles, but the same bloodlines. The Medici understood this. During the Black Death, while Florence lost half its population, the banking families retreated to fortified compounds in Tuscany. They sealed the doors. They burned anyone who approached. And when the plague passed, they emerged wealthier than before. Because desperation creates opportunity, and opportunity creates dynasties. Fast forward to the world thinks the Nazis are defeated. But in Argentina, in Paraguay, in the mountains of Bolivia, certain families arrive with briefcases full of gold, with art stolen from museums, with blueprints for technologies that won't be publicly known for another 30 years. They didn't lose the war, they relocated, and they built networks that would shape global finance for the next 80 years. You see, the ultra-wealthy don't believe in flags. They believe in continuity. And continuity requires infrastructure that exists outside the system. Beyond borders, beyond governments, beyond collapse. So when Mark Zuckerberg spent $300 million building a compound in Hawaii with an underground bunker system that could sustain his family for decades, that wasn't paranoia. That was pattern recognition. When Peter Thiel bought citizenship in New Zealand and secured land far from major cities, that wasn't a vacation home. That was an exit strategy. When Sam Altman, the man building the artificial intelligence that might replace your job, invested in a company that manufactures nuclear bunkers, he wasn't hedging his bets. He was reading the writing on the wall. But here's where it gets darker. These aren't isolated incidents. There's a company called Vivos. You've never heard of them. That's intentional. They build luxury survival communities for the 0.01%. And their waiting list is now over 20,000 people deep. 20,000 millionaires and billionaires, all willing to pay between $35,000 and $5 million for a single spot in an underground compound. Think about that number. 20,000 of the world's wealthiest people, all preparing for the same event. An event they won't name publicly. An event that financial advisors describe in private memos as the Great Unraveling. And it's not just in America. In Switzerland, there are bunkers beneath the Alps that can house entire communities for years. In Norway, the Global Seed Vault stores millions of plant species in a fortress designed to survive any catastrophe. In Russia, oligarchs have built entire underground cities beneath their estates. In China, the government has constructed a network of tunnels beneath Beijing that could shelter millions. But only the connected few will know where the entrances are when the sirens sound. This is orchestrated. This is coordinated. And it's accelerating. But what do they know that you don't? Let me show you something. In 2019, A survey was conducted among billionaires by a Swiss wealth management firm. The question was simple. Do you believe the current global economic system is sustainable? 92% said no. 92% of the people who control the majority of the world's wealth believe the system is broken beyond repair, but they didn't sell their assets. They didn't crash the markets. They did something far more strategic. They started building escape pods. If this is making your skin crawl, if you're starting to see the pattern, then you need to hear what comes next. Hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see every headline, every market crash, every political crisis from this moment forward. The trigger wasn't a single event. It was a realization. Somewhere around 2015, the financial models started breaking. The algorithms that predicted market behavior, that managed trillions in assets, that determined interest rates and credit flows, they stopped working. Not publicly, not in ways that would cause panic, but privately in boardrooms and central bank meetings. The people who built the system started admitting the truth. The debt is unpayable. The derivatives are unwinding. The population growth is inverting. The supply chains are too fragile. The energy transition is too slow. The political systems are too corrupt. And the breaking point is closer than anyone wants to admit. So they started preparing, not by warning you, by insulating themselves. In 2021, during the lockdowns, while you were arguing about masks and vaccines, the ultra-wealthy were buying farmland. Bill Gates became the largest private farmland owner in America, not for profit, for food security. Because when supply chains collapse, grocery stores empty in 3 days. But farmland is power. Farmland is survival. And it wasn't just Gates. Chinese investment firms bought massive tracts of agricultural land across Africa and South America. Sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East secured water rights in regions that will still have rainfall when climate patterns shift. Private equity groups purchased entire grain storage facilities because whoever controls the food controls the future. But food is only one piece. Energy is another. While governments pushed solar panels and wind farms, the billionaire class was investing in micronuclear reactors, private off-grid systems that could power a compound indefinitely. Why? Because they know the grid is fragile. They know cyber attacks are inevitable. They know geopolitical conflict could cut power to entire regions overnight. So they built their own. Then there's water. You think Flint was an accident? You think that droughts in the Southwest are natural? The wealthy have been securing freshwater sources for a decade. Private wells, underground aquifers, desalination plants on private islands. Because when the taps run dry, and they will, water becomes more valuable than gold. And the people who control it will control everything. This is the dominoes falling. And they're falling faster than anyone predicted. By 2023, the bunker industry was growing at 47% annually. 47%. Companies that manufacture blast doors, air filtration systems, hydroponic gardens, and electromagnetic pulse shielding couldn't keep up with demand, and the clients weren't preppers in camouflage. They were hedge fund managers, tech CEOs, pharmaceutical people who spend their days telling you the economy is strong while spending their nights designing escape plans. And here's the sickest part. They're not just building bunkers. They're building hierarchies. Inside these survival compounds, there are different tiers. The people who paid $5 million get private suites with real windows. The people who paid $1 million get bunk rooms underground. And at the bottom, there are service contracts, engineers, doctors, security personnel, people with skills deemed essential. But they don't get ownership. They get a spot conditional on obedience. It's feudalism, digilegi, and it's being built right now beneath your feet while you worry about rent. But what you should really be asking is, what are they afraid of? Not nuclear war. That's too clean. Too binary. The threat they're preparing for is systemic collapse. The kind that happens slowly, the kind where grocery stores close, where banks freeze withdrawals, where power grids fail for weeks, then months, where governments can't pay their employees, where currencies hyperinflate, where social order dissolves into chaos, and they have the data. They know the pension funds are insolvent. They know the municipal bonds are toxic. They know the federal debt is mathematically impossible to service. They know climate migration will displace hundreds of millions of people in the next 20 years. They know artificial intelligence will eliminate 40% of current jobs within a decade. They know the next pandemic won't be handled any better than the last one. So they made a choice not to fix it, to survive it. You want to know the timeline they're working with. Their private risk assessments, the ones that never get published, predict a major systems failure between 2025 and 2035. Not a recession. A reset. The kind where old power structures collapse and new ones emerge from the ashes. And they plan to be the new ones. This is why Elon Musk talks about Mars. This is why Jeff Bezos is building rockets. This is why the cryptocurrency billionaires are buying islands. They're not dreamers, they're realists. And the reality they see doesn't include you. So what do? What does anyone outside the 0.01% do when the people who built the system are abandoning it? You wake up. You stop trusting the narratives. You stop believing that your government, your bank, your employer has your best interest at heart. Because the evidence suggests otherwise. The evidence suggests that while they smile for cameras and promise stability, they're quietly moving their assets into tangible goods, into land, into gold, into infrastructure that can function without a functional society. And maybe you start asking yourself the uncomfortable questions. What would you do if the power went out for a month? What would you do if your bank account was frozen? What would you do if the grocery stores were empty? What would you do if the police stopped responding? What would you do if the government announced a currency reset and your savings became worthless overnight? These aren't hypotheticals. These are scenarios the ultra-wealthy are actively preparing for. And if they're preparing ... shouldn't you be? But here's the hardest truth. You can't build a bunker. You can't buy an island. You can't afford a private army. So your survival strategy has to be different. It has to be community-based. It has to be knowledge-based. Because when the system fails, the people who survive won't be the ones with the most money. They'll be the ones who can grow food, who can fix things, who can organize, who can protect, who can adapt. The billionaires are building walls. You need to build networks. And here's the final piece, the one that should keep you awake tonight. They need you to stay blind. They need you to keep working, keep consuming, keep believing the system is stable. Because if everyone realized what they know, if everyone started preparing at once, the collapse they're trying to survive would happen immediately. Your awareness is their threat. Your panic is their nightmare. So they keep you sedated with entertainment, distracted with politics, divided by manufactured conflicts. But you're watching this video, which means you're waking up, which means you're starting to see, and that makes you dangerous. Not to the system, to their plan, because the more people who see the truth, the harder it becomes for them to control the narrative. The harder it becomes for them to build their bunkers in secret. The harder it becomes for them to abandon the rest of us without consequence. So here's what you do. You share this. You talk about it. You prepare quietly but deliberately. You build relationships with people who have skills you don't. You learn to be, you stop depending on systems designed to fail. And you remember, the greatest threat to power isn't violence. It's awareness. They're building bunkers because they know the storm is coming. But storms don't last forever. And when it passes, the question won't be who had the biggest bunker. It'll be who built the strongest community. Will you be ready? Will you be awake? Or will you be one of the millions who never saw it coming? If this opened your eyes, if this made you question everything you thought you knew about security, about power, about the future, then you need to see what we're covering next. Because this is just the surface. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications and prepare yourself for the revelations that even the billionaires don't want you to know. The bunkers are real. The timeline is real. And the question isn't if. It's when, what will you do when the lights go out?